While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. The harvest is plenteous, but the labourers are few. When Donna asked me which readings I wanted for today, she obviously thinks I have a flexible attitude to the lectionary, which on the whole I don't. I replied, I'll settle for the 2 challenging set readings, but I haven't yet worked out how I'm going to raise the dead at Ash, as Jesus instructs his disciples. But if I asked you to say in one sentence, what is the good news about Christ, about Jesus? What makes sense to you now about the Christian faith? What would you say? I suspect you might say something about love. And I think of a famous cosmologist who said recently, love is the meaning of the universe. And you might want to say something about forgiveness. And I always think of the best-known wedding hymn, ransomed, healed, restored, forgiven. Who like me his praise should sing? But Paul says simply, God proves his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. What does Paul mean? In our large ecumenical parish in Milton Keynes, we had a hospice. Willen Hospice was built beside a lake with stunning views across the lake. And one afternoon, I got a call. A mother of 29 was dying. When I got there, the very helpful nurse said to me, I think she's nearly ready to prepare her funeral. Her name was Tanya. We'd never met before. I was told she had a husband and 2 young children. Almost immediately, she asked me, where am I with God? All I could think of at that moment was the story of the penitent thief on the cross in Luke's Gospel. You remember one of the thieves rails against Jesus. Why can't you save yourself and us? And the other thief says, we deserve to be here. And then Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Today, Jesus replies, today, whatever's happened in the past, today you will be with me in paradise. I didn't ask Tanya whether she was used to having communion. I just said to her gently, I would like us now to receive bread and wine for you and your family. So I went home, as always thanking God for my scooter, knowing I could get home quickly, got bread and wine, and we shared a very simple communion. Then together, we prepared her funeral. She died peacefully the next day, and a week later, I took her funeral. Today, you'll be with me in paradise. This experience with Tanya makes sense to me of Paul's great conviction. Whatever has happened in our past, God shows his love for us while we are still sinners. Christ died and dies for us. Paul's message for us today. And then from our gospel reading, the Lord says the harvest is plenteous, but the laborers are few. What about God's laborers today? Let's focus from a moment on the disciples that Jesus chose. They were such a mixed lot. Thomas almost questioning what he said, Judas questioning what he did, James and John, known as the sons of thunder, it says quite a lot about their characters, almost certainly wanting to overthrow the Romans, as of course Simon the Zealot party. Throw in a bunch of fishermen and a tax collector, and no one can accuse Jesus of choosing clones for his disciples. And yet these men, and of course they were all men, as they had to be for the 12 to represent the 12 tribes of Israel, yet these men, for all the times they let down Jesus, and for me those stories make the Gospels real because they're telling stories against themselves. For all the times they let down Jesus, this group, if you like, become the vehicle of a worldwide movement. And we wouldn't be sitting here this morning without them. If I knew you well enough, I don't think I'd have any trouble at all in finding the 12 apostles from among you. I think we are no better or worse than, well, we might be worse, but you know what I mean, than those 12. We're here. We are the labourers. But then, who equips and supports the labourers? And I remember being very shocked as a young priest in East London. Someone saying to me, Father, well, we're really here to support you. And I thought, oh dear, am I that feeble? Actually, I felt ordination is about caring and enabling and equipping Christians for their daily lives. Where do they come from? In my last parish, a lot of gifted people, true, we needed another priest. And so after some thought, we approached somebody from one of our congregations. Alan Sykes, quiet person, not superficially charismatic in any sense, but he was respected by everyone. 6 years later, Alan was ordained, and he worked in the Richmond team ministry until he died aged just 67, 2 years ago. And then, just after I retired, Joe Moffat, vicar of St Mary in St Alban, rang me and said, look, Julian, I've got this person who's thinking about ordination. Will you see them? Her name was Caroline, a nurse by training. She was working in international development. In time, she was ordained and has been working for the last 3 years as a priest at St Mary and St Albans. Has she been here? Could have been. May not have been. In 4 weeks' time, Caroline will become the vicar of St Paul's Grove Park in Chiswick, which happens to be the congregation which I have been helping out for the last year. Nothing to do with me, but I'm really chuffed for Caroline, and I'm really chuffed for the congregation. And 2 more women from that congregation are now in training for ordination. And a month ago, I was very moved, as you understand, go back to the place where I was first a parish priest in Chatham 50 years ago, to one of the very first of the Anglican Methodist parishes. And it was very moving. Of course it was. 50 years old. And as I sat there thinking about the congregation, no bigger than this one really. I guess we had 50 communicants on a Sunday. Could be more, but let's say 50. But from that congregation, 2 men became Anglican priests, and 2 men became Methodist ministers. The harvest is around us, and we are the labourers. I don't know what God may be saying to you today. I was going to saying to us today, I think, I didn't want to be ordained. I was 15, I was at a boarding school, and a man came to preach. He came to preach from South Africa, where I was born. His name was Trevor Huddleston. He was a prophet, fighting apartheid. And at the end of that week, I knew there was no escape. And I wrote to him. He kept the letter, sent it to my father. I got it back. Dear Father Trevor, thank you for coming to my school. I think I want to be a priest. I won the race on Saturday against Hurstby Point. As a 15-year-old, that conviction has never changed, however hopeless I felt. It's a privilege. And then I mentioned that small matter of Jesus saying, got to raise the dead. I also know and have learned that when faith in Christ comes to make some sense to people, it changes their lives forever. If you like, there's no escape. Last week I listened by Zoom to a testimony, and I found it very moving. This man, he came to this country in 1964. He was 11. He was, and perhaps still is, a Sikh. He lived in Dudley in the Midlands. That's what I call Lenny Henry country. We all heard Lenny Henry, I hope, with that marvellous accent. Can't do it. There were no Sikh temples for miles around in Dudley. And so this young man, boy really, went to the nearest temple as he knew it. And it happened to be a Methodist church. And he was given such a warm welcome at that Methodist church that he stayed. Eventually, he became a Methodist minister, and his ministry has changed many others. In 2000, he became the first person of another culture to become president of the Methodist Conference in this country. It all began with that welcome at Dudley Methodist Church, the right hand of fellowship. The harvest is all around us. We, you and I, are the labourers, and God proves his love for us that while we were still sinners, Christ died and dies for us.